Hi, I'm Gary Berger with Roto-Rooter Corporation. Today we're going to prepare a cable for use in the Roto-Rooter machine. We'll discuss the various types of end fittings and how to install them into the cable. We'll show and explain to you the use of two cable accessories, the floating ring and the tailpiece. And last, we'll load the cable into the reel and show you how to splice it should a break occur in the field. So let's go out into the shop where a new cable is being prepared for use. With us is Tom Hoffman, Roto-Rooter's technical representative. Tom was a Roto-Rooter serviceman before joining us and is highly qualified to talk about the repair and maintenance of Roto-Rooter parts, equipment, and accessories. Hi, Tom. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Gary.
Today we're going to discuss your method of preparing a cable for use in the machine. How about sharing with us first, though, the different types of ends available to our servicemen?
Sure, Gary. Well, first there's the male end. It's the original end developed back in 1935 when the Roto-Rooter concept was first introduced. Then they introduced the slip joint end, which is the most widely used and preferred by most servicemen today. I used it myself in California for several years.
Did ya? Well, let's take a closer look at these ends and discuss the advantages and disadvantages of each type.
Well, fine, Gary.
Gary, this is the male end. This portion of the end, of course, is in the cable like this. The male end gives you two options for attaching the blade. The preferred use is with the C1 chuck. As you can see, the blade is left permanently attached to the chuck. This allows you to easily screw the two together and tighten with a wrench. A less commonly used method is to attach the blade directly to the end and secure it with a washer and nut. However, there is a disadvantage to this method. The threads may become worn over time, making it difficult to change blades. When attaching two lengths of cable with these male ends, a coupling sleeve which is threaded from both ends is used. By the way, male ends are available for each size of cable ranging from 1/4 inch to 3/4 inch. The most popular end is the slip joint end. It is available in different sizes to fit the 9/16 to the 3/4 inch diameter cable. Well over 70% of our servicemen use this type of end. It is preferred because the blade on a C1J chuck can easily be attached to the end and secured by tightening the Allen screws. A primary benefit of the slip joint method is the reduction in the possibility of the connection coming unscrewed if you must reverse the direction of the cable. Another advantage is that when the slip joint end is installed on both ends of the cable, you can add additional lengths of cable with ease.
Well, that certainly explains our end fittings, Tom. What happens if you get so hung up in tree roots, though, that you can't back the cable out?
Well, that's why some people prefer the male end. It gives them the option of backspinning the reel, leaving the chuck and the blade in the line.
But we don't recommend that, do we?
No, because they're hoping that it'll wash down in the city sewer line.
What about the slip joint end? What's the advantage of it over the male end?
Well, the slip joint end is locked with two set screws, so when you backspin your reel, your chuck doesn't come unscrewed.
But it can still get hung up in tree roots. What do you do then?
Well, that's right, Gary. Well, one trick I used was liquid detergent. The roots would become slick, and then I could backspin it and throw them off the blade.
Well, that sounds like a very good idea. I see you're all set to install some end fittings. Why don't you go ahead and get started, and I'll explain what you're doing.
Very good, Gary.
Tom is going to install slip joint fittings on both ends of an 11/16 cable. First, he's removing the band, except for one, which keeps the cable coil from unraveling and becoming unmanageable. The tag he is removing should be saved for your records, along with the date you placed the cable in use. If a problem should occur, this tag contains an ID number, which tells us when the wire coil was made, allowing us to review the characteristics of that particular cable. Of course, it is much easier to install end fittings using a vise, but field installation with a pair of vice grips is quite common. Tom will use the CP cable punch available from Roto-Rooter Corporation. It is used to spread the first winding of the cable so the end fitting can be easily started. Here he is using the slip joint end wrench. The slip joint fitting is inserted into the wrench and the Allen screw hand tightened. The end fitting is inserted and tightened until the shoulder of the fitting meets the end of the cable. By the way, the end fitting wrench Tom used with the slip joint ends is also available for installing male ends. It's listed in your catalog. Well, Tom, that didn't look too difficult. By the way, let me mention that Roto-Rooter will install the ends on the cable when you place the order. You just need to request it in advance. Well, what's our next step?
That's putting the floating ring and the tailpiece in the basket before we put the cable in.
All right, well, let's go over and take a look. There are several methods of attaching the cable to the reel. The method preferred by most servicemen is with the floating ring. As the name implies, it actually floats free in the reel. The advantage of the floating ring is that it eliminates slack in the coil, and that allows the cable to pack more uniformly into the reel as you retrieve it from the sewer line. Before Tom proceeds, let's take a closer look at the components he will be using. They consist of the ring and a D3J reel attachment for use with slip joint ends. If you're using male ends, you'll need a D3M reel attachment. Tom will connect the D3J attachment to the slip joint fitting on the cable. Next, he will insert the cable into the reel and connect the attachment to the floating ring. The Allen and hex set screws should be adequately tightened to assure a positive connection. Now let's return to Tom as he finishes connecting the D3J attachment to the cable. Tom is loading several feet of cable into the reel to allow enough slack to connect the D3J attachment to the floating ring. After attaching the cable to the ring, he will insert the set screw, which holds the assembly together. The screw will be tightened to assure a lasting connection. The short section of cable Tom has loaded is called a tailpiece. It is nothing more than a 10-foot piece of cable with fittings on both ends. The tailpiece has several advantages. It allows you to use the full length of your working cable, and you can quickly add additional lengths of cable or change your cable without disconnecting it at the reel. When slip joint ends are used, the connection is simple and quick. Once again, both Allen screws are tightened for a proper connection. Loading the cable into the reel can be tricky. After you have connected the two ends, place your foot over the cable coil before you cut the last band. This will help you control the cable as you load it into the reel. By the way, if you order a reel, floating ring, and a tailpiece or length of cable, we'll put it together and load it into the reel at no charge. Just ask when you place the order. Now that you've demonstrated how to load the cable into the reel and get it ready for field use, how about explaining to us what causes a break and how to fix it should it happen while you're in the field?
Well, break usually occurs due to crystallization or the metal fatigue. So it's very important to cut that cable back about 8 to 10 inches on either side of the break and then file off those rough edges.
If these rough spots are not removed, they can cut into the splice core as you screw it in. This could cause a poor fit, and eventually the connection may come loose.
All right, Tom, let's splice this cable you've prepared.
All right?
Tom has already filed both ends of the cable and opened up the first winding with the cable punch. He places the vice grips about 2 inches from the end of each length of cable. This allows the splice core to be screwed in without any additional pressure on the cable from the vice grips. The splice core is inserted and the vice grips are rotated to tighten the splice core into place. You'll notice that Tom is only turning one pair of vice grips. That's because the splice core will screw simultaneously into both cables. Some servicemen turn both pair of vice grips. Either method will work. However, screwing on one end of the splice core, then the other, will not work. The splice core will come apart. Splice cores are available for 3/8 through 3/4 inch cable.
A properly spliced cable means both ends meet at the center of the splice cord.
Tom, do you need to weld the end fittings or the splice cores?
No, Gary, if they're installed the way we've shown today, they shouldn't come apart. And besides, if you're not an experienced welder, you may overheat the cable and cause it to break under stress.
Well, thank you for the information and your demonstrations. Let me review the end fittings and other cable accessories we demonstrated today.
First, we discussed the male end. It's available for all cable sizes, 1/4 through 3/4 inches. The coupling sleeve is used in conjunction with all male ends to connect the ends of 2 cables. Next, we discussed slip joint ends. They're preferred by most servicemen, but available only for 9/16, 11/16, and 3/4 inch cable. Your smaller cables will still require male ends. To make your job easier when installing these ends, we demonstrated the use of the slip joint end wrench. It's also available for male ends. The CP cable punch was used to spread the first winding of the cable to allow easy insertion of the ends and splice cores. The floating ring is used to attach the cable into the reel. It eliminates slack in the coil and allows the cable to pack more uniformly into the reel. The floating ring should be ordered with a D3M reel attachment if you're using male ends on your cable. If you're using slip joint ends, you should order a D3J reel attachment. For those who don't wish to use a floating ring, the D3, shown in the upper right-hand corner, is needed to attach the cable directly to the reel. When we covered cable splicing, we used the splice core. They are available for cable sizes 3/8 through 3/4 inches. The tailpiece we demonstrated is nothing more than a 10-foot piece of cable with slip joint or male ends. The tailpiece has several advantages. It allows you to use the full length of your working cable for your average job. In addition, when you need to add more cable, the tailpiece offers you another advantage. You don't disconnect your cable from the reel. You simply disconnect it at the tailpiece and add your extra reel of cable to complete the job. One tool which is used frequently is a cable cutter. Cable splicing and other similar repairs can be completed on the job, saving valuable time. Roto-Rooter's cable cutter is made from quality steel and will cut all cable sizes, including 3/4 inches. All of the equipment and parts we demonstrated today are listed in your catalog.
Hopefully, we have presented some ideas and techniques you can utilize in your day-to-day service work. For Roto-Rooter Corporation, Tom Hoffman, and myself, Gary Berger, thank you for joining us.